Congratulations, class of 2024, WNBA. They say that's going to be the best way to get you ladies to pay like the men in the NBA. But I say no way. You know, on the evening of April 15th, I had many posts on Twitter at my handle, LisaHampton_. All that received thousands of views until I posted about the disparity between the WNBA and the NBA salaries, and I explained in part why that disparity existed. I thought that was interesting, to say the least. Spot Track had provided documentation via a tweet about the salary of $78,000 for the first year for the first 4 players and $388,000 over the period of 4 years for the top 4 players. For the purposes of this show, I'm not even going to talk about the winners and the losers, if you will, of that draft, particularly the likes of an Angel Reese that fell in 7th, and her salary would be less than the top 4. Nevertheless, for purposes of staying focused on this issue, I'm going to make sure you understand why that is an issue, as to why, in part, the WNBA will never be on par with the NBA. You see, notwithstanding the issues of salaries, which I have addressed over the last 2 or 3 years, the disparity lens, but it's not as simple as stating the NBA player rookies make $10 million and the WNBA players get $78,000. And that is what I was elaborating upon in the tweet. People don't want to hear that. We want to politicize, if you will. I think I coined that word too many years ago. Someone in the media told me it did not exist. Okay, and now everyone's using it. But we do. We want to politicize sports when it comes to the gender of women. When we discuss the agenda of women as a gender in sports, we politicize it. So here's the deal. Why the WNBA will never be profitable like the NBA is because of arm deals. What do you mean arm deals? Arm deals is manufacturing of weapons and military technology. No, arms is an acronym, and we have 2 sets of them to discuss. The first is age, the second is race, the other is money, and the last is sex, as in gender. Arms, age, race, money, sex. Because of the way the arms are dealt, the WNBA will never receive the pay like the men of the NBA. First of all, and notwithstanding, it is difficult for all of us to include and make part and parcel the WNBA with the NBA, because you have to look at the history. You have her story, the WNBA, but you have history, the NBA, which has been around for almost 70 years. If we look to the overall history of professional basketball, the early 1800s, and then we look to how it became a entity, organizations, and leagues. There's about 3 or 4 of them, including the ABA. I don't want to spend too much time on that. That'll be a separate show, and I think I wrote about that a couple of weeks ago, if not a year ago. So go online to Phil, to Rim, pull that story. It's also in Fannikins as well. But once you understand the history of the NBA, it makes it difficult for women to think that they're going to wake up one day and receive the same pay. It doesn't work that way. The NBA is the league's marketing arm. There's that word again. I'm quoting from a report that I did that landed on the desk of the former late Commissioner David Stearns. The NBA properties consist of the following divisions: Consumer Products Group, Creative Services, Information Technology, International Group, Marketing and Media Group, and NBA television, and new media venture. The NBA Entertainment is an award-winning television production and broadcasting subsidiary of the NBA that produces various TV shows, including, at the time, NBA Inside Stuff. I'm not even going to touch that right now, and whose idea that was. Hello. And NBA Action, along with NBA home videos and public service announcements. NBA Entertainment also oversees the NBA's U.S. and international broadcasting activities. Now, with all due respect, the WNBA does not have a fraction of these programs and or services. Okay? Not a fraction. It took decades for the NBA to build themselves to reach the status of being in a position to pay rookie salaries of $10 million. That's a process. That is a process. Say that word again. That is a process. How does arms impact the process? Before you can discuss that, I have to also discuss this. The NBA is able to pay rookies $10 million because they have ticket gate sales, attendance, and a stronger fan base, merchandising and branding and marketing, media rights, sponsorship, corporate advertisement, and corporate sponsorship of premium seating inside of every arena, and community outreach. The WNBA does not have that. While everyone is hyped over what they think Caitlin Clark is going to be able to do as a number one draft pick for one of the worst teams in the league, the Fever, come a little closer. Let me whisper something in your ear. A little closer, right there. It's not going to change anything. Caitlin Clark, for all intents and purposes, is in 2024 what Rebecca Lobo was in 1997. A phenom. She is what Diana Taurasi was in 2004. 20 years later, still the same, nothing has changed. Arms dealing. Age, race, money, sex. While Wall Street Journal, CNN, and others wish to compare Caitlin Clark to Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, and Venus, they fail to recognize there is a difference in her. She's not black. You can put her on SNL and a performative stunt or skit, excuse me. Yeah, skit. And you can make her say that, oh, I just love these black females and they are my heroes. But game, no game. And you can't spell game without me. Try. Game. You can't spell game without me. You can't spell game, the NBA game, without the M-E. Game knows game and real knows real. R-E-E-L, like movie, production, is different from real, R-E-A-L. People saw that, they knew that. The cultural phenom that Michael Jordan was in the 80s, that globalized the NBA, that Venus brought to tennis and Tiger to golf, was bringing in core groups of people who had otherwise been marginalized and not allowed to play, participate, learn, and or engage in those sports. They had been locked out of those sports. Everything from golf clubs to tennis clubs, country clubs, by course, by association. There is no doubt that Caitlin plays a great game of basketball when she wants to. There's no doubt. But to assert that she can somehow single-handedly be Wonder Woman and take the WNBA to where Rebecca Lobo couldn't take them, it's not going to happen. Why? Because of arms dealings, age, race, money, and sex. The conversation no one wants to have when we attempt to understand why there is disparity in the income of the WNBA and the NBA. Let us be clear. Soccer is not having the same problems. Tennis is not having the problems. Venus and Serena are multi-millionaires. In fact, Venus and Serena could purchase, if they so chose, a franchise for the WNBA. She has a great investment portfolio, both of them. Tiger Woods is almost a billionaire, as Michael Jordan is now. So, age, race, money, and sex. What does those arms have to do with the inability for the WNBA today to receive the pay of the men in the NBA? Are y'all ready? I know this may offend some people, particularly coming from a woman, but this is what journalists do. Let's start with age. The first letter of the arms. Women in sports do not play for the same number of years as men play in the NBA. The women in sports age differently than men in the NBA. There was once a saying that men age with grace and women age with gray. Men age with grace, women age with gray. When you look at the longevity of the career of women in the WNBA, age plays a role in that. The average woman in the WNBA enters at about age 22. For those who are heterosexual and or married at the time that they enter the league and or while they're playing, they also have an issue with age. It is called that maternal clock, wherein they want to be married, they want to have children. So for that core group, age becomes a factor in their longevity in the game. That is needed in many regards to build a fan base and for stability in the game. Okay? Those are conversations that a lot of people don't want to have. It is, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. So wherein someone's thinking that the salary differential between the WNBA and the NBA is simply based on gender, that is not accurate information at all. Because we look to tennis and we see women making as much, if not more, than male tennis players. Venus and Serena. There are a host of others, by the way. Okay? White, European, French. That being said, we then assert that the WNBA players aren't paid a lot in comparison to other team sports. But then I have to disagree with that. I did a show called She Believes, and in the show She Believes, I reference the salaries of the female players. And there are several female players who play professional soccer, and they make a relatively decent salary. Much more than the $78,000 payable to women and the WNBA. Those salaries include, but are not limited to, the following. Because I had to document to make sure that I give you the accurate information. And so we have Maria Sanchez at $1.5 million. She plays with the Red Star. Sophia Smith at $2 million. She plays for Portland. Crystal Dunn, $1 million, also plays for Portland. Trinity Rodman, she plays for the Washington Spirit. And Mallory Swanson, $2 million, who plays for the Red Star. So, and that's from She Believes. Why don't you download that as well? So we know that it's not predicated simply upon the team sport. So what is it about the WNBA that creates this environment where after 30 years, they're still paid nominal? It would be the equivalent of minimum age for professional athletes. Let's talk about that. There are many who seem to think that what has happened with the class of 2024 is this new phenom. There are many who do not know the history of the WNBA from the days of Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, Rebecca Lobo, etc., that Olympic team of 1996 that caused the WNBA to be formed with the help and assistance of former late Commissioner David Stern. But if you follow or did research over the last 30 years, as I have, then you know or have reason to know that after the formation of the league, the hype dissipated. The interest dissipated. The media dissipated. The fans dissipated, despite the fact that there had been an overwhelming increase in the popularity of NCAA basketball. The professional level was different. And that is what, unfortunately, many of you are going to witness firsthand with Caitlin Clark, Cameron Brinks, Rickea, Aaliyah, Reese, and the rest of the squad. You're going to notice it is different. It's almost like the hashtag for the Boston Celtics. Different here. The WNBA is a different seed. They do not and they will not have the fan base. Collegiate sports are different because they cater to a different audience. By the time you reach the WNBA, age becomes a factor. The priority of a lot of the women that once followed you collegiately, they have new priorities. They're now mothers. They are wives. They are career-oriented. And the interest that many of them once had in basketball on the collegiate level as participating as a college student, as it were, does not follow into the professional ranks. It just doesn't. The next with the age is an issue of maturity. When you're in college, it's about bragging rights. Oftentimes, as you mature and you become older, you don't have the same bragging rights. And then the other thing that happens as you age is this other word, relocation. So those who once resided in Louisiana, Iowa, Connecticut, California, many of them relocate. So you lose the fan base, and they're now become fans, if you will, of other things that may or may not have anything to do with sports. And their schedules no longer, as they age and mature, allow them to sit down at a television set and watch television to catch a game of women playing basketball. Those are some of the issues with age. The next is race. There is no mistake about it without being offensive to anyone. There is disparity, not simply in salary, but also in race in the WNBA. Let me repeat that. There are issues of disparity in the WNBA, but it's not simply predicated upon salary. It's about race. You see, for the first 30 years almost, from 1997 to almost up to 2020, 2021, there only have been 2 Black coaches out of 12 teams in the WNBA. As Blacks built the league in terms of their athleticism and their performance, they were never afforded or given the opportunities to be in management, team ownership, leadership positions, and or coaching. And wherein that population is viewed as cattle and nothing more, you're not going to get the response from the fan base. You're not. The reason why the likes of a Michael Jordan, a Tiger Woods, and a Venus were able to do exceedingly and abundantly, above all that anyone could have asked or thought, they were also able to engage in community outreach, and they targeted a marginalized community that was untapped and ignored, and those were Black and Afro-Latino youth. And in that, they utilized that platform to create golf and tennis clinics, basketball camps, and then they had the overwhelming support of a brand called Nike. Okay? Race. The next is money. As I previously stated at the top of the show, the NBA has multiple properties. And wherein you look at those properties, they're all profitable. But money is critical. You cannot pay what you do not have to pay. And you cannot invest if there's not a rate of return. So if I'm not going to yield, I'm not going to invest. And that's exactly what has happened. So it's not about simply getting media rights. You have to create the atmosphere and the environment and draw the excitement to get the fan base there. Once they're there, you have to be able to retain them. But you guys have a problem getting them there. You can compare, on average, 7,000 season ticket holders and or 7,000 persons in attendance at the average WNBA game. Now, compare and contrast that to almost 30,000 people for some arenas, 19,000 to 22 for others who attend the WNBA. Even though the NC2A women's competition, according to Nielsen ratings and ESPN's alleged ratings, was more than that of the WNBA and the NBA's finals, the media packages that those organizations have are solidified, if you will. They know from the door that they're going to garner the commercials, the fan base, and hence the money and the profit. And it's profitable for them to continue to stay in that lane, be it the NBA app, ESPN, the major networks. These organizations who have sponsored and advertised on these networks during that time do so fully aware of what profits they will attain from the NBA's fan base, from the NC2A's fan base. What money has the NC2A women's basketball generated? In fact, in 2022, the Final Four men's had $19.3 million for which the women generated about 27% of that. Compare and contrast. The WNBA doesn't profit from the NBA. They are now a separate and distinct institution in that they are expected to secure their own ticket gate sales, their own fan base, their own merchandising, their own media deals, sponsorship, corporate sponsorship, and community outreach. The WNBA has failed in each one of these areas. And if I were given a report card, I would give them an F like Frank for community outreach, an F like Frank for sponsorship and media rights, an F for merchandising, an F for attendance and fan base, and an F for ticket and sales, gate sales. They are not doing anything in this space. And wherein you don't do anything, you don't get anything in return. Next issue. Who's buying WNBA jerseys to wear? And you want to know why many of them aren't being purchased? The next is called sex, as in gender. This is the conversation no one wants to have. It is the assimilation of lesbianism. Let me repeat that. It is the assimilation of lesbianism with women in the WNBA. Wherein when you compare that to a game like tennis, where there very well may be girls who identify in same-sex relationships, they are feminized. They are feminized. Little short dresses, beautiful long legs, nice shoes. Women could be your greatest fan base. The NFL documents and my research from DNL and various other entities like us that at Seltzer Sports that maintain data on women's sports fans. That's why I call them Fanikins. That's why we have that program, a unique brand of sports fans. Of 150 million women who watch sports, particularly the NFL, 47% are women. Of 150 million fans that participate and watch sporting events, particularly the NFL, 47% are women. Women can relate to seeing men who they think are hunks, have riz, sexy, got all of that, and all of that too. They can imagine, they can envision, look at him, look at his body, look, yes, a real conversation here. Most women are not looking at other women in that capacity. So wherein you have a sport where the women look like men, the fan base that would more likely support you could be men, but there's no attraction there. There's no sex appeal. And most women who don't identify with LGBT, they're not going to participate through that lens. So if there's an issue with age and an issue with race and an issue with money and an issue with sex appeal and sex and orientation, and now the push for transgender, at the same time we're saying we want women's sports, but at the same time we're saying it's okay to take a man who has the chemistry and the hormonal makeup of a man to now compete with other women. We have politicized the sport to an extent that it is unacceptable. When we address those issues, we will then see an increase in ticket sales, attendance, merchandising, media rights, etc. In the interim, it's about accessibility, responsibility, markability, and stability. Again, when the WNBA addresses accessibility, responsibility, marketability, and stability, you will see success. You will be in a position after 30 years to demand increase in salaries. It is not going to happen because of Clark. The best chances that you had that made it so successful was because of the likes of what was presented through the lenses of the Rebecca Lobos, the Cheryl Swopes, etc. By 2004, the game was almost dominated by women who were identifying as members of the LGBTQIA community. And for those who are heterosexual, they are not going to encourage their girls to participate and or to watch and or to celebrate. And unfortunately, they're not even willing to tolerate. To that end, when the WNBA addresses those issues, age, race, money, and sex, you will then appeal to the masses. And in doing so, you will be in a position to demand your pay and be like the men of the NBA. Thank you for joining me today on Field to Rim, brought to you by Seltzer Sports. This is Lisa Hampton. Follow me on Twitter at LisaHampton_ or Seltzer Sports.